We're now live, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm a bit frightened of saying this again, just in case it sends people away again. But anyway, welcome to the CAFM Asset Management Board today. And first of all, Kirsty, can we have apologies for absence and substitutes?
Yes, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Megan Swift, and Councillor Hutchinson is substituting on her behalf.
Right, okay. And no apologies from the others? No. Okay,
No.
Thank you. Right, and I just remind everyone of members' interests to remind members of the need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests they may have in relation to the items included on this agenda. You do so now or when the item arises. Not seeing anything. Okay, thank you. And this meeting is open to the public, except that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, it is recommended that the public be excluded for the following item of business. Hello, Peter. We've just started, so I'll just carry on with the admission of the public item. It's recommended the public be excluded for the following item of business on the grounds that it includes the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the stated paragraph of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, namely item 12, paragraph 3, financial and business affairs. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting on the 20th of September. Does everyone agree that is a true record? Colin? Councillor Hutchinson?
Yeah, can I just ask, it's a correct record as far as I'm concerned, but item 18, where it says officers would look into whether there was an IDOCS or similar database available to community groups, I haven't had a response to that, and I just wondered whether there had been a response and I just hadn't got copied in.
All right, okay.
I do declare an interest. I'm a member, a trustee on a community group that's looking at community asset transfer.
Okay, I don't know. I think possibly none of the officers here could answer the question, and I apologise. I did look into this, and the council does have that. I think it was that database, but it wasn't available to me. I think it's available through business support or some other. I think it was business support seemed to control it, so you had to get in touch with them, and I then failed to take it any further. So I can follow that up for you if you want. And just...
I can contact business support myself, but yeah. Yes, it would be useful if that information was available to other community groups. So yes, if that could be, if there is access, if that could be publicised, it would be helpful.
It would help, yeah. Okay, thank you. And if you need any help with that, just come back to me.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So other than that, can we agree the minutes, members? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we then move on. What's gone on with my... to item 5, which is revenue budget monitoring, and that's Paul, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say a few words, if I may. Just one point of clarification. The report, the revenue monitor that's attached to the report today, members may notice it's actually the same one as was reported to the CAFM board in September, and that's because the meeting today has fallen between 2 revenue monitoring periods, and we're in, as well as being sort of in the middle of the budget process and quite a few other things, we're in the middle of a monitoring process, Chair, that will be reported to Cabinet in the new year. So I have to apologise in the fact that the report to the CAFM board in March will contain a more extensive update in relation to the year. And in fact, at the meeting in March, we'll be sort of 2/3 of the way through the winter period and at the end of the financial year. So that will be a comprehensive update. We have been looking at certain areas of the budget. One of them that we've reported throughout the year is obviously energy and the impact of energy price inflation. And the work that we've undertaken today within the CAFM, we are going to be reporting in the next monitor, Chair, that the assumptions we've made in terms of the energy is broadly speaking in line with last time. So if members look at the appendix attached to the report, they'll see there's a budget pressure in CAFM of 1.9 million, and that is essentially equivalent to the potential budget pressure for energy overall, Chair. So other than energy, we're anticipating that the rest of the CAFM budget will broadly be in balance. So energy is a big issue. We are getting updates from YPO on that throughout the year, Chair. And as I said, we'll report that to Cabinet. We're in the process of renewing our energy electricity contract with YPO, which I think runs out in March 23. The gas contract runs till March 25. One of the main issues, obviously, is going to be going into next year is going to be the energy rebate scheme that the government announced earlier in the year, which runs out in March. So that it's again going to be the single biggest issue that impacts on the CAFM budget overall. Obviously, entering the winter period, repairs is another area, Chair, that where our spend is obviously related to the work that we're required to do in the winter period. There are other factors that will impact on the budget overall moving forward. We mentioned in the report about there are a number of community asset transfers that the council's considering, and the disposal of buildings along with that will obviously impact on the revenue budget moving forward. So it's a limited update this point, Chair, but we will report more to the meeting in March.
Thank you, Paul. And Councillor Hutchinson, you've got a question or a comment?
Yeah, thank you. To my understanding, the costs of materials and construction costs have also far exceeded the increase in CPI. And I was wondering what impact that would have on the revenue budget in terms of maintenance of the infrastructure. Similarly, I know it's very difficult to predict levels of inflation for the next year or two ahead, but although the rate of increase in costs of energy are likely to slow down significantly, the cost is not going to fall back down to its baseline. No. So, you know, I hope that is being modelled into the budget for the ongoing couple of years. Is that correct? And what sort of figures are you using for sort of construction maintenance?
Yeah, if I can just come in, Chair, on the energy issue, and then perhaps somebody else in the CAFM may want to talk about the inflation on the construction issue, is that obviously the council's in the process. The council reported its medium-term financial strategy to Cabinet in October. There is an assumption around energy inflation around there. I think it's around 8% in terms of energy price inflation. I think at the minute, we're a long way off understanding what energy price inflation will be. I think we've seen things in the press where there's been talk around gas prices sort of coming down from the peak that they were sort of earlier in the year. We've got the announcements that they'll come later in the year around what the government is going to allow for in terms of a price cap. Until we sign the contract with YPO to purchase electricity, the YPO reluctant to give us any sort of firm information around where prices are going in terms of that. So I think there's a lot to understand yet in terms of the energy. We have assumed something in the budget. I think it's around 8%. How that compares to actual energy price inflation, I think we've really got to wait and see on that issue, really.
Yeah. And construction material costs and their impact on the revenue budget?
Yeah, I think obviously we've got a significant programme of repairs, both cyclical, reactive repairs in the programme. I think what impacts on the cost the most, obviously, is the level of the contractor materials that you need to deliver that programme. I think my understanding is that it's going to impact on our capital program more than necessarily the revenue budget, but there will be an impact on the revenue budget. Obviously, contractors who complete the cyclical work tender for those works on a 1 or 2 or 3 year basis, and those prices increase. So there will be an impact. Just what that impact is, I think it's a bit difficult to say at this stage, but at the end of the day, if costs do rise, then that's something that's got to be contained within the budget, and it's just another consideration overall that we have to take into account. I think, Alan, you want to say a bit more on that issue?
Yeah, if I can, through you, Chair, just to add to what Mr. Greenwood said, we have regular dialogue with our kind of our existing and repeat contractors that we use for the day-to-day, the kind of repairs and maintenance that we do, and we are contracted in with them. Excuse me. And there are prices that are agreed for a period of time. But of course, they're facing the same pressures that everyone else is facing, and so there's an open dialogue with us about those issues and how we can manage and support them through that. At this stage, that's not having a significant impact on our costs. But of course, when we look to recontract, it's likely to play out in any revised contracts going forward. So that's something we need to be mindful of. As Mr. Greenwood's also said, what we are seeing is we're seeing significant increase now for any capital works that we're procuring. So as part of our estimates, as we're starting to build programs of work, we're now factoring in our sense of the market and where that's going, and that then determines, how far we can go with the schemes that we are programming in. So we know it's the market's volatile. We've got if I put it this way, we've got an ear to the ground. We're being sensible about things, but there are existing pressures that we're having to manage through and deal with, which is it's a significant challenge. And some of that will come up through some of the other conversations around some of the other items we've got on the agenda today. So say we're alive to that. We're working with it. We're working with our contractors to understand the impact. But it is impacting, and so we're working through that to best effect.
Alan, so can I just butt in for a second? I think the biggest impact we're feeling at the moment is delivery times on materials and components, where a few jobs are being held up for quite a period, really, and that's bigger than the cost implications. But as Alan said, so because we are contracted on virtually all the services, as those contractors renewed, there will be different pricing schedules that would need to be agreed. But our challenge at the moment is getting stuff repaired quickly. That's it. Thank you.
Chair, can I also ask regarding the community asset transfer programme? As I've said, I am involved as a trustee in one of the transfer programmes, but Robin Tuddenham sent round an e-call a couple of 6 or 8 weeks ago saying how important it was that these went through to reduce the ongoing costs to the council. But I'm very aware that, particularly at times when budgets are under pressure, that individual departments or parts of departments may seek to make savings in their budget line, which then have an adverse impact on the organisation as a whole. And resources available to support the asset transfer programme seem to be very, very stretched at the moment, meaning that it's taking a lot longer to go through the various stages. And I just wondered whether the fact that these built premises are still within the council's responsibility for heating and lighting and maintenance before the transfers go through, that whether the savings that are made from lack of staff balance the actual increasing costs of retaining of not disposing of these premises through leases. I'd just be interested to know the, you know, I've seen it happen too many other places where a silo approach to budgets is not helpful to a larger organisation.
Alan, do you or Steve, do you want to come in on that, or do you want me to pick up some of that?
Excuse me, I'm happy to start, Chair, if that's okay through you. No, it's a fair point that Councillor Hutchinson makes, and it is something I've seen over many years of working in local authority and other organisations. It's something that we do try and plan for now. So if you haven't heard me say it before, you will certainly hear me say it again. Whenever we're talking about schemes of work or projects or programmes of work, I use the phrase total cost of ownership or cost of change. So we can set out down a path. What we need to understand from the outset is what it will cost to deliver what it is we're seeking to deliver. And that's particularly pertinent when you're talking about delivering reduced costs or savings. Often people make the mistake of counting on gross savings for schemes, and they fail to factor in the cost of delivering that change and or the residual cost that will be left after that scheme's been delivered. And so Councillor Dacre knows one of the things that we're doing around a range of developments at the moment is making sure that we build in those costs. And also we factor in the resources that are required to deliver in a timely fashion. And sometimes there is a balancing act. If the resource isn't available, then there has to be an acknowledgement that things will take longer. And as you know, we can accelerate things, not always just through increased resource. There are other factors that sometimes kind of impact. But in the case of community asset transfers, it's probably important to recognise, it's exactly the point, there are at least 3 different parts of the organisation that are required to deliver those transfers. There's ourselves as a property function. There are our communities colleagues who work with the community groups to support them around their capacity and the joint working agreements, so the milestones that are expected of them and kind of the conversations around all of that. And then, of course, there's our legal team that are required around the licenses and leases and so on, and the kind of the formal part of the process. So as I said, that does make it a little bit more complicated to align a combination of resources from different parts of the organisation. But you're absolutely right, Councillor Hutchinson. When we embark on these schemes, it's really important that the entirety of the resource is identified up front, it's aligned and it's allocated and it's committed to that. But of course, the other thing that often happens, particularly in a large, diverse organisation like ours, is that there are a range of demands on those same resources around a range of different things. So some of you will have heard there was a recent scrutiny conversation around our people, assets and systems programme, which has been designed and developed to try and avoid that mistake that many organisations make, not just in the public sector, which is committing the same resource 3, 4, 5 times across different schemes when, of course, it's a finite resource. And we really do need to focus on what are the key priorities and where are we going to focus our efforts and our energies, and which things might therefore take a little bit longer or not be taken forward at this point in time. And that's always a difficult thing to be able to flush out. So no, we're very alive to that. In regard to the current community asset transfers, you'll see, well, there's an item on the agenda later where we can perhaps pick up that item in more detail. And also there's our delivery plan, where it is highlighted as a bit of an area of risk for us, and resource is the issue. So perhaps we can pick up more of that conversation later. I don't know what helps in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm just very conscious that as more emphasis is being put on future community asset transfers, that the resources should be put in place to allow those to occur as speedily as is safely possible with due diligence, because particularly with community and voluntary groups, prolonged delay leads to a cooling of enthusiasm, and it makes it very difficult to actually keep the community support alive throughout what seems to be an unnecessarily long period. But if more community asset transfers are proposed, I do hope that we use the learning from what's been going on for the last year or two to actually make sure that we have the people resources in place across the different, within the different departments that you've described, to allow that to happen. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. I suppose what I would add is that you referred to the savings made by a building no longer being staffed but still having building costs. And yes, it does reduce the savings, but nevertheless there are savings. So I think that's important to note. And yes, I think as Alan has indicated, the topic of community asset transfers comes up later in the agenda, and perhaps we can discuss that again when we get to that. Okay, so I don't see any other questions, so scroll back to sorry, so I think that report is just for us to note, so we can note that. Thank you. And then if we can move on to item 6, which is the capital investment programme, and I have that down as Elaine. I think that's right.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm hoping everybody's had a chance to read through the report, which goes into quite a little bit of detail. Basically, there are 4 separate areas of capital investment that we're dealing with at the moment, different budgets, but all similar types of work that we're moving through. Obviously, it's already been mentioned about the issues with budget pressures, and we are trying to manage that at the moment. And obviously, if that does become an issue, that will be raised sorry, as part of future requirements, alterations that we may have to do in what works we're intending to do. But we will try and manage that as best we can. I've just double checked. We are at the moment going out to Ainley's depot, the store side, the dirty side of Ainley's. And we've had 6 contractors around looking at that this week. So we are getting people interested, which hopefully will help with looking at prices and keeping them, you know, within a competitive area. Obviously, we've no forward programme at the moment. We've just got the money that we're spending, and that's something that we are going to look at over the next few months or so, and develop condition surveys across the estate, so we get a true picture of where we are and what needs doing over the next few years. But I appreciate that there are huge budget pressures on that. If anybody's got any questions or anything, I'm quite happy to answer those.
Councillor Hutchinson again.
Thank you. Can I ask about the Victoria Theatre project that's within the spreadsheet? Within it says ventilation required to address CO2 levels. I mean, CO2, although raised CO2 levels can make you drowsy, make you more sleepy, so your audience falls asleep during performances. It's more a matter that it indicates that if particularly in winter, if people are breathing out viruses and other bugs, that they build up within the stale air within that area and make it more likely that infectious diseases are passed on amongst the audience or performers. It says ventilation required to address CO2 levels, no further works proposed. Does that mean that it's been assessed but no work has been carried out, or some work has been carried out? It's hard, I can't really work out from this as to what has and what hasn't been done.
Right. Apologies. During the pandemic, we did quite a lot of work in reopening old ventilation within the building, because to try and keep heat in, the ventilation had been closed over a number of years. So during the pandemic, we reopened that. We took some extra extraction out. We've been monitoring that because we did have some monitoring levels in during the pandemic. And it looks like that we've reached a level that is satisfactory for the current situation we're in. So we think we've addressed the immediate pandemic and obviously improved the ventilation, because as you probably know, there's lots of things going around at the moment, and we're not getting any, reports from the theatre that this is, particularly now it's pantomime season, that there's any great risk. So I think we're going to leave that and continue to monitor it for the time being.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Okay. Pardon me. If there's no more questions, I just want to comment really that you refer in the appendices that to Queen's Road, Neighbourhood Centre and Three Ways, and just at the time you put the spreadsheet together, those asset transfers or the decisions, the cabinet decisions in relation to those haven't been made, and obviously they have now been made. So there is movement there in what's happening to those buildings. So really, I think it's just for everybody to realise that it is an incredibly challenging time for the service, trying to deal with all of these issues. I mean, it was touched on earlier on about inflation issues, and it is going to be very, very challenging. The other thing I'd just like to note is the zero carbon, and I note that we are now trying to get ourselves ready to make further applications in the future. So we're trying to ensure that we don't miss out on anything because we haven't got proposals ready. So that's very pleasing to see that we've still got the capacity to do that forward-thinking work and on that path to net zero. Okay, so if there's no, Councillor Hutchinson again.
Thank you, Chair. Apropos of what you've just said, I would be interested to hear what learning has taken place from the carbon reduction program so far that would influence the kind of proposals that are being put forward for subsequent funding bids.
Okay, I think I'll probably hand over to Andrew, who takes all the praise for this, because Andrew's been looking after the scheme. So I'll let Andrew speak on that. Thank you.
You're on mute.
There you go. We took on 6 buildings and got funding for 6 buildings. 3 ground source and 3 air source, and I'm not so sure we'd do 6 buildings again. Been really tough, and we took a lot of lessons into the decarb 3, where we're just doing Todmorden Sports, but even Todmorden Sports is over £2 million investment. So one of the learnings is we probably maximise on about 3 sites. Another big learning is we chose at Spring Hall, instead of doing deep boreholes, because we had quite a lot of land, we chose to do what we call slinkies, which are where the pipe works 1.5 metres below ground, and so a massive array is required to provide the heat for the building. And we've had lots of issues around the field and maintaining the field and repairing the field. And one of the things we did find, we found quite a lot of rubble under the ground. So we just had a lot of problems. So I think if we're going to do ground source again, we would definitely stick to deep boreholes and not slinkies. Another lesson that we find all the time when we're doing new installations of heat pumps are that the funding doesn't cover the distribution network within buildings. So one of the things we're finding now in all the sites with the town hall, Bankfield Museum, is that the heat pumps are connecting to the old heating networks in the buildings, and so we're having to do quite a lot of low grade upgrades on you know, putting bigger pumps in on the heating networks. So there's a lot of lessons we took, and we took a lot of those lessons into Todd Sports. I've got to say, I need to touch wood at the moment, but we have to complete Todd Sports by end of March, and it's going really well. I suppose so Todd Sports, we've also put the micro filtration in, which replaced the sand filters, and the micro filtration is fully commissioned now and fully operational, and the people on site are delighted with the water quality in the pool. So that's a good. We've virtually finished the rooftop PV. And again, that'll be a big step. So we learned some lessons. We won't be doing another. I think we're trying to put a bid in now for some funding. We're trying to get around £90,000 to put a bid in for a Victoria Theatre, Halifax Borough Market, and Heath campus. We will be putting a bid in January for the design and assurance funding, so we can be prepared for a decarb 3C bid, or D, might be C or D, which we think is going to come out in September. So we've had a few hard lessons along the way, but the other thing is we've achieved budget. We've achieved budget on decarb 1. And it's very likely that we'll achieve budget on the Todd Sports project. So, and you know, on these construction projects, it's always quite difficult to achieve budget. But I think we've done it. So that's it. So we won't resolve the sports field at Spring Hall until we can reseed the area in April next year. So. It's a bit of an eyesore, and it's been very difficult. And I've apologised a number of times for that because it isn't very good.
I look forward to that reseeding. It would be nice if the Harris fencing could be put back up again. Where it's up. It's council. It's been put up yesterday. Oh right, great. Yeah, it keeps getting pulled down, but yeah, it's up again now. I got a picture last night from the contractor who put it back up. So. Okay. That's good. Can I just ask what your experience was with the capacity locally for design and contractors to install these low carbon solutions? What do you think? On decarb 1, the tenders were awarded. So we had quite a lot of design funding. And so we didn't use local. We went out for tender. The tender was won. But I have to say, we've used a local supplier on Todmorden Sport called Halifax Renewables. And despite me having some serious doubts about his technical capability in the early days, he's done a great job. It's a guy called Steve Shimbles and of Halifax Renewables. Well, he's doing a great job. He's not finished yet, but he's been really, really good. I'm so pleased for him, and it must be the biggest project he's ever taken on. But he's come up trumps. It's a really good story. That's good. The more that we can keep the Calderdale pound within Calderdale, the better. Yeah. Surprise me from a nice way. Thanks, Ed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really encouraging to hear. And I don't know if there's any way that we can do some publicity on that then, to trumpet the fact that we've had a very when it's finished, and assuming it continues to be successful, that we can trumpet that local success for us. Yeah. I think that would be really good. I got somebody came on yesterday wanting to put an article in a magazine on Todd Sports, on a construction magazine. So we'll be following that up and try and get something in there. Yeah, lovely. Yes, please. Yes, but I think something locally as well, well as a construction magazine. Kirsty, I should literally be gone for a minute or two, long enough for me to get downstairs, open the door, and come back up again. Okay. So just can I ask on that, the ones that one thing to note was, of course, you had difficulties, didn't you, where you were talking about earlier about difficulties in supply of parts, and we had difficulties with either one or all of the heat pumps about that, didn't we, because the parts were, or the machine, the heat pump itself took quite a long time to arrive. So I think it's all the more impressive that we've managed to get those finished. But in respect to the 3 that you mentioned, that in the future, would they be air source or ground source?
If we've got the land, we'd always do ground, because you get higher temperatures out of the ground than you do out of the air. So wherever possible, we would do ground. I mean, obviously the town hall, there's not a lot of land around. We'd be able to put deep boreholes in, but where we've got land, we'll do ground source.
Right, because I wouldn't have thought you would have the ground at the Victoria or the Borough Market.
No, we won't.
No, but Manor Heath, potentially you do.
Manor Heath we've done. Heath campus.
Heath campus, sorry.
Yeah, that probably lends itself to ground. Yeah.
Okay. Lovely. Okay, so unless there are any more questions, which I'm not seeing, it's just recommended that we note the capital programme, that we note the budgetary pressures and the need to reprioritise or look for external funding, and note risks to the corporate estate and the achievement of our targets of net zero. Okay, so if everyone's happy with that, so I can mark that as noted. So we then can move on to, scroll down, item 7, the Halifax regeneration programme, and that's Janet, I think. No, Janet's not here, so
it should be. Excuse me. It should be Janet, Chair, but it doesn't look like she's made it to the meeting. So apologies for that. If I just I'll lead off briefly just to say this is no more than a progress report, an update report for members. There are some significant schemes in here, clearly. When we look at the review of the proposals around the leisure centre, that's not kind of an immediate delivery. There's a time required now to review the options and come up with proposals for the way forward there. So this is a touchstone really of the kind of the latest position, but the outlook will take a few months to work through. I think probably picking out the other kind of notable update on here, I think, is the fact that we've retendered the works for Mixenden Hub. So it looks like that's with legal now to draw up the contracts for those works to progress. And I know that's been quite a sensitive issue over quite some time. But other than that, Chair, I think the report's for information. But if any members have got any questions, I think probably between Steve, Elaine and I, we may be able to field any questions that you may have.
Okay, so Colin, Councillor Hutchinson again.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I have had some information back, which has been very helpful, but regarding the borough market and heat control strategy now and going forward, obviously with the very cold weather, there have been issues amongst the market traders and their customers about the lack of heating across parts of the borough market. I was just wondering what, going forward, if you could just outline the approach that you're taking to try and maintain the environment within that building and the timescales that we might envisage for the measures that you'd be taking.
Alan, are you all right with taking that one?
Yeah, I'm happy to lead off, and Elaine may well kind of plug some of the gaps. So I suppose in kind of time-honoured fashion, there's a short, a medium term and a long term kind of set of proposals here. The heating system in the borough market has been a challenge for quite some time. I think this recent cold snap, where it's been exceptionally cold, has really brought things into sharper focus during the last few weeks. Added to that, of course, we've got works taking place. So that there are a number of elements that, as part of the Future High Streets funded scheme that's referred to in this report, there are no proposals themselves to upgrade the heating system. So what we are looking to do, though, is to improve the fabric of the building, which will improve the insulation and retention of heat within the building. I mean, it's a vast expanse, so that's quite a challenge. One of the things that we've done in the last 12 or 18 months is we've piloted different mechanisms for recycling the heat in the building. So the Albany Arcade area of the Borough Market, we've re-roofed in the last 12 or 18 months. And we've put in what are called destratification fans that essentially push the heat that's lost in the expanse of the height of the building back down into the areas that people kind of frequent and occupy. So that's had an impact. So that's something that we'll be looking to roll out through the re-roofing works that will take place as part of the Future High Streets Fund. So that's probably a kind of a medium-term proposal. Longer term, Andrew's just referred to the work taking place at the moment to secure funding to develop feasibility to look at a low carbon heating solution that's not only low carbon usage, but far more efficient and productive than the heating system that we've got in at the moment. So longer term, we'll need something quite different that will help us to achieve our ambitions in terms of carbon reduction. But in the short term, that doesn't help when it's cold now. It's not quite as cold now as it was last week. But what we have done is we've installed some temporary heating solutions for the time being, just to help us over those difficult and those extreme periods that will clearly occur between now and the medium-term solutions. And as I understand it, over the last, it's no longer like with light now, because it's not quite as cold as it was. But I think that did have an impact over the weekend. So we'd put in the temporary heating solutions and we'd extended the use of those for a period just to address those extremes. What else have I missed? The other part, which we're looking at, is the auto opening doors. And these days, we'll all be familiar with what do we call them? Heat curtains. When you go into a shop or a big building and you walk through doors, there's that heat that you feel when you go through. The idea of a heat curtain is it stops the cold air from coming in and the warm air from going out. We don't have those systems in the Borough Market at the moment, but that is something that we are exploring to see whether there are things we can do again to retain the heat that's generated within the building. But it is, I say, it's difficult because it's such a big, vast, high building. So it's looking at how we can recycle and reuse the heat within the building. And then longer term, it's looking at more efficient and productive heating systems. Have I missed anything there, Elaine?
Sorry, I don't think so, no, other than we've got some new heaters that are going to be put in today that we've bought that we can move around the market. And I've asked for an assessment of the plaque heaters, which are working, which aren't working, so we can assess where these heaters need to be and if necessary, move them around. So that's work that they're probably going to do in the new year, as well as looking at the auto heat curtains and doors, because I know the new door that's been put on Albion Street, the heater that's there is not wide enough, so we are looking at an alternative, and the alternative we're trying to get is one that would fit with air source heating, so that we're future proofing, as well as not just putting an electric one in. We're just trying to do a little bit of work to make sure that we're spending money wisely. So yeah.
Okay, thanks for that update.
Okay, yes, thank you. So I did, so you referred, Councillor Hutchinson, sorry, I'm getting my word all confused, but you had raised this, and so I'd had the conversations with Alan about it. And yesterday I went into the Borough Market to go to the wine shop there, and I thought it was relatively cosy for me, but then I'm fairly like my cold, so maybe not for everybody, but I did think it was noticeably, you could tell it was warm. But I was inspired to look up to see where the heat was coming from, and they are just Heath Robinson-esque, aren't they? These funny little heaters dangling from the ceiling. It's just amazing that any heat is ever produced down below and stays down below at all. So anyway, thanks for all the work you're doing to try to make sure that it's a warm and welcoming place for people. Okay, so does anybody have any other questions on any of the other projects mentioned in there? No, okay, delighted to see that Northgate House has been handed over, and we're now just in the financial closure and a 12-month defect process, so that's really good news that that's reached that stage successfully. Okay, so I think that's just for us to note, and we then can move on to item 8, the SIT review, and that's believe is Steve Hoyle. Yeah.
That's right, Councillor Dacre.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so I'll just do a basic background, a few comments with regards to each of the areas. So first of all, phase 1, which was the initial phase, we are currently reporting green and were last time, so the majority of that phase is complete. We just have 2 disposals left to complete, which are ongoing and hopefully will be sorted during 2023. One of those is just held up slightly in planning at the moment in terms of obtaining residential consent. With regards to phase 2, we are still on an amber RAG rating. The main reason for that at the time of writing was the Queen's Road Neighbourhood Centre decision, or trying to obtain the decision, but as Councillor Dacre has mentioned earlier in the meeting, we now have a decision and a way forward with regards to Queen's Road Neighbourhood Centre to be offered as a community asset transfer, and we will have information on that to provide to interested parties within the first 2 weeks of the new year. 2 other elements which are holding things up slightly are certainly, one is the adult daycare review, and we're waiting for the service to start that review and inform us of their requirements in respect of that. We understand that is will now be started in the new year in earnest. And then the final one, which was really mentioned, was the children's centres on in terms of the ongoing issues with regards to the contract, etc. We are in now and have been for a month to detailed discussions with the commissioning team from the Children and People Service with regards to the information that's required for the children's centres re-tendering. So again, that's certain main areas of those are starting to move. So just moving on to the office accommodation strategy. Again, we're on an amber RAG rating. The main reason for that is the town hall and the works that we were originally looking at to the town hall. The update with regards to the town hall is that the main requirement here that we're looking at is accessibility with regards to installation of a lift. The installation of a lift requires reconfiguration of certain areas, and obviously has an impact on other areas. So we're currently investigating that impact, and we're hoping to have a report within the first month or so of the new year. What we need to do to get the lift installed, we'd need to do a phase effectively before that to make sure that there will be some kind of relocations and who would need to be relocated. So we need to get that information together first of all before we can take that further. There's good news with regards to Horton Street, what's the old Customer First building, 19 Horton Street, where the works are now complete to bring that back into a public facing building. The works were completed last week, and I was on site yesterday with the team, and there's been a really good job done there, and we are just currently bringing from today service related furniture and fittings, etc., into the building, so that will go live to the public the first week in the new year. And then Just finally, with regards to the depot strategy, we've currently paused that at the current moment in time, mainly because the asset planning manager we need to recruit into that post. We will commence recruitment in the first week of January. I think it's just important to note that whilst the actual strategy has been paused, we are still keeping up to date with the service needs and requirements, which will feed into that as and when we can move that forward. So hopefully that just provides a bit of a background there, Councillor Baker.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything? Who'd have thought it? Councillor Hutchinson.
Sorry about this.
No, that's fine.
We know how expensive it is for children who require care to be looked after outside the area. You know, the cost of care home placements outside Calderdale is really extravagant. So having adequate capacity locally for looked after children who need residential care is extremely important. I know there's been, for several years now, there's been a search for an additional children's home within Calderdale. And I just wondered where that had got to, why it was taking so long, whether it's just because there aren't any suitable sized properties available in the right sort of area, or is it that they get snapped up before the council can actually go through the buying process to take it in place, and whether options for bespoke building of a suitable premise would be considered if it's not possible to find a ready built building that can be converted, as to whether the overall cost to the council would be reduced by making sure we have the capacity within our own borough.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to take this up, or shall I say something here?
I'm happy to come in initially,
Okay.
Councillor Dacre, if that's okay. Yeah, so Councillor Hutchinson, you'll be aware that we've been looking for quite some time. Initially, we were provided with funding to look for to acquire two houses for the Children Looked After service. One of those has been acquired in Brighouse, but we have had difficulty in finding a second property. The main reasons for that are the requirements that we have in terms of we need effectively a 5-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom with provision to put an additional bedroom in or an office in. The market, of course, started to slow down a little now, but has been very hot over the last 12 to 18 months or so. So we are pretty restricted in terms of the areas that the service would like to have the homes. We're restricted to particular areas. They don't want them in areas of high deprivation. They need to do checks in the area with regards to the crime that or the crime rates in the area as well. So we're a little restricted in some of the areas that we can look at. We also need planning permission. So one of the major inhibitors for us is if we're looking at a house that is on the market, we're up against competition with ordinary householders who are looking to move house or purchase a house. So we aren't in terms of an offer or a competitive offer, we're not as competitive to the vendor of that building if there are other offers there, because we have to have ours will be conditional upon planning. And that was one of the issues that we had in one area where we had a building under offer, and then we received kind of local objections as well with regards to the planning. Now, hopefully things are, as I mentioned, the market is starting to tail off slightly. At the minute, there's not a great deal coming forward in terms of new houses coming on the market. That's partly possibly due to the time of year, but also due to kind of the economic position at the moment. So we'll hopefully, we will in the new year look at what we can see when the market reinstates itself again in kind of January in the new year. With regards to looking at new build, we have had some discussions with the Children and People's team with regards to that. That would only really potentially stack up on land that we have. Now we do look at where we have land available and where we have buildings and coming back available and disposals as to whether they are suitable. We are currently working or waiting for kind of a specification from the Children and People's team so we can look at that. Now that would only really stack up. We think we would certainly need to get quantity surveyors involved to provide us with costings for individual elements. But we think that would only really stack up if there's any particular land that the council owns that we could use and utilise, rather than having to acquire land and then construct the building ourselves. So it is something which is being explored, and we're just waiting for the further discussions to take place on that. I hope that helps.
I'm pleased to hear that is being considered as an option, because I know the delays in the planning department at the moment mean that the council can't really be very light on its feet as far as moving quickly to put in bids for existing properties. So I'm glad to hear that you are sort of looking at possibilities for new builds, because I'm sure that over a few years the additional costs would be balanced by the reduction in cost of out of area placements. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. And I suppose my comment when I hear this is always really sadness that local objectors put paid to one possibility, which I just think is a huge shame. And I think various people within the council are looking at that and whether anything can be done to try to avoid that happening in the future, and to try and deal with any risk of objections, because it's a terrible shame. So something else I was going to say about that, but I can't remember what it was now. Okay, so I did want to, unless there's any more questions from anyone, I just wanted to comment about the depot strategy, that although you're working towards that, I think it's also fair to say, and should be noted, that we have been able to move on with improving some of the depots that we know that we're going to need, and which we're in real need of refurbishment and reordering. So for instance, Ainley Top and I think the one at Todmorden are examples of that. So you haven't just sat back whilst we're waiting for the overall strategy. There is movement there, which is good, obviously, because those are people's working places, and they need to be fit for purpose and safe. So again, that's a report for noting. So if there's no more questions, we'll note that report, and we can move on to item 9, which is the Community Asset Transfer Monitor, which again is you, Steve. And just to say again, any minute now, I shall be dashing out of the room to open the door just for a minute or two.
Thanks, Councillor Dacre. Again, just a very brief resume of the report, really. So as mentioned, and has been mentioned earlier in the meeting, the last couple of meetings we've stressed the resource issue that we have with regards to monitoring the existing community asset transfers, and that's something that we don't like to be the position we don't like to find ourselves in. But I'm afraid of the necessity of the priorities that we have at the moment. We've had to take a decision that we are not formally monitoring them at the moment. We are basically dealing with them on an as and when basis, and one of those has recently occurred with regards to London Foot Community Association. who have received a condition report. So we are having some discussions, or we have had discussions with them with regards to them potentially giving that building back to the council, although they are currently in discussions with locality to look at if there's anything that they can potentially do with regards to obtaining funding, etc. The group has previously, in the last couple of years or so, had capacity issues, and have had kind of a new board of trustees come forward. The chair has recently resigned, and they have got a new chair. But again, it's with the board to decide how they want to proceed, and then we can assist them going forward. There has been mention of resource earlier, and as mentioned in the last paragraph of the report, we have recently received approval for 2 new posts in the asset management team. One of those at an experience level. So we're hoping that by having the 2 posts, or to go out for those 2 in the beginning of January, we will, once they are in post, that should hopefully alleviate some of the pressures in respect of the community asset transfers. We'll be able to get some of the existing leases that we're going through at the moment and future ones down into the team, so it takes that pressure from me, so then I can then hopefully start doing some of the monitoring with other colleagues as well. So hopefully there's something there which we can look forward to. Just provided a very brief update on the existing transfers which we're progressing at the moment, all at various stages. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions? No, okay, well, I will have a comment, but I'm just going to, if you can just talk amongst yourselves for a moment. Right, okay, so about that. So yes, I mean, I think as Councillor Hutchinson said earlier on, it is of concern to everyone. It is this resource issue, because there are some of these that have been in process for some time. There's a number that need to be monitored, and we're likely to want to do more in the future. And so it does have to be resourced properly. And I'd just like really to, in addition to what's in that report about the 2 new staff, I'd just like to confirm that as the responsible member, I'll be working with officers to try to make sure that we do get that resource in the future, because if the council wants to do these things, it's got to do it properly. Okay, so if we can.
Chair, you're on mute. And Councillor Hutchinson has raised his hand.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Hutchinson.
Thanks. I just wanted to reiterate what Steve had said earlier, that the setting up of these community asset transfers does require resources in other departments as well, and if that could be looked at in the round with your cabinet colleagues,
yes,
I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, yes, I mean, I have had a discussion about that. Yes, it does have to be. It's not only CAFM that are involved. You're right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, I think item 10, the delivery plan, is you, Alan.
It is, thanks, Chair. So hopefully you've had a chance to have a look at it. It's a format that you're all familiar with now, I think. As you can see, the Q2 monitor remains generally positive. We've touched on a few of the key areas of activity already through the agenda, which is no coincidence. These are our areas of focus. One of the activities on the delivery plan has been completed, which is good news. 11 remain on track. And now I normally skip over the ones that remain on track, but I think it's probably important to say we shouldn't underestimate the fact that there are some major developments there, and we've been through a significant period of change. So you'll see in the delivery plan that we've consulted on and approved 2 full staffing restructures of the whole team while these activities have been delivered. So that's not to be underestimated. People have been through a significant period of change and are still working through that to some degree. And while we've done that, we've reshaped and maintained our estate, as you've heard, the detail that Elaine's talked about. And actually, in some ways, that's only a part of the work that takes place across the estate as well. So significant activity. And as we've already touched on, delivering all of the decarbonisation and energy reduction work as well. So some big changes through a period of change for the whole team. And as I say, quite a significant amount of the activity has remained on track. So I'd like to place on record my thanks to the team for who they responded to those challenges. There are a couple of actions that have been identified as amber at this stage that require some early intervention. So we're not overly concerned about them, but there are things that we need to put in place to address those. One of those relates to making better use of the wealth of data that we have. So we have an asset management and maintenance system that we implemented a few years ago, which has now built up a whole host of key data. And one of the reasons that we've restructured the team is to create the capacity and the focus to use our data to inform our focus and our resource allocation. So using performance to drive our developments. Now, we've built in capacity into the structure, but we've not managed to recruit that yet. So that will probably be the first half of next year when we start to get the resource in place to really drive that forward in earnest. So that'll be hopefully a really positive area of development during the course of the next 12 months. And then the second, I probably don't want to go back over this or back into this. This is the community management of assets policy, the review and the delivery of the community asset transfers that we've already talked about, where again, there's a resource issue. Steve's already identified that we've identified some resource to help us to address our part of that development. But as we've said already, there are other parts of the organisation that are implicated by that work, and we just need to make sure that we come up with a rounded solution to that. And if that's an area of work that we do continue to take forward. Other than that, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? I'm looking to you, Councillor Hutchinson. Okay, so yes, so you, Alan, you were talking then about the understand and 1.2, the performance, when you were talking about the other amber, weren't you?
Yeah,
the one that was completely incomprehensible to me. Talking about power.
Oh, apologies. Yeah, sorry. I do try and avoid those abbreviations. Apologies for that. So yeah, so BI is that's a system that our business intelligence team use. So there's an opportunity for us to link in with an existing system, to interface systems, so that we've got information that's held within a management and maintenance system that feeds into a performance reporting system that gives us a much better dashboard, so we can more easily identify those areas of focus and things that we need to take forward.
Right, I'll take your word for that then. So that is good. So that, but again, that is good if different parts of the council are able to use information that another part already has. It's clearly a good development. So yeah, so there were no further questions on that. So I think we can note that. And that takes us on to 11, the work programme.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. In the usual way, we do try and kind of set out an agenda for the year at the beginning of the year. We've got one more meeting to be held during this municipal year. The work programme has the suggested items for the agenda for that meeting, but I'm happy to take any views or thoughts from members if there are any changes or further items that they'd like to consider at that meeting.
Well, I'm happy with what's there for March. Has anybody else got anything that they particularly want to add? No, not seeing anything. So yes, I think we can take it that only generally speaking, one or other of the reports covers most things that we're going to want to bring up. Yeah, so I think that's fine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So that, Kirsty, takes us to the exempt item. So if you can turn the live stream off,